It has been a busy couple of weeks. Ebos, you are currently at the NCAA Academy. Last week, you were at the Puma Pro6 event. Brandon, you were at the Under Armour Association Finals out in Chicago. Travis, you were where were you, Travis? You were at the Adidas All-American camp in Atlanta. Were there flight problems there? Atlanta Airport. That's a whole nother subject. All right, guys, we're going to go to Bossi first because he's got to get back in the gym here. But basically what we want to do here is talk about what we saw in the second week of the recruiting period. But I know there's an emphasis to talk about the individual players, and we're going to do that. But with all of these circuits wrapping up, I think it's only appropriate that we start with the teams that won championships, because at the end of the day, that's the point of this game. You got to win the game. So, Bossi, I know you got to run. We're going to go to you first. Who did you see at the Pro 16 from a team perspective that came away with that Puma championship?
The BTI United team, and this is a team that there was a lot expected of them. They had 2 top 30 players and 7-footer Xavion Staten and skilled 4-man Nick Kamania, and they had a good surrounding cast around them. Isaiah Johnson is a rising point guard. Trent McClain is a really skilled power forward who Travis and I are both really high on. So it's one thing to go in there with the expectations. It's another to get it done. But both Staten and Kamania were awesome. Kamania was named as the MVP of the event. They just backed it up, and they're a really good team. And, Puma's kind of an upstart thing. This is the first year that they backed things. And I think anyone who saw this BTI United team would vouch for the fact that they could go they could have gone to the Peach Jam. They could have gone to the Adidas Palmetto Road Championship, the Under Armour Finals, any of those things, competed with any of the best teams from the other shoe circuits.
Well, that's a big-time front line you just mentioned there when you talk about Staten, Kamania, and McClain. No wonder they came away with the championship with that threesome up front. Want to ask you now about a standout player at that circuit who really, aside from the champions, anybody who really stood out to you in the 3 days you were in Chicago?
Kingston Fleming's for sure of the SA Future, San Antonio Future. He's our number 21 ranked overall player in the country, one of the top 3 or 4 point guards. And man, we've seen him be pretty dynamic off the dribble and get to the rim and things like that. But he was at his very best. Whenever he wanted to get into the lane, he got in there with ease. He finished with big jams over big guys. He, on his team, he doesn't really have a lot of other big time guys or anything like that. Their team wasn't as talented as say BTI, but he got them into the semifinals. He hit a big 3 on Saturday night in a quarterfinal game at the buzzer to get them there, and just really had a great all-around event and backed up while he's so highly regarded nationally.
All right. Was there, whether it's an underclassman or a riser, someone who really made an impression for you, whether, like I said, somebody who's poised to jump up the rankings in coming years or coming months, but somebody who exceeded expectations one way or the other?
Yeah, so I really liked what I saw out of Kelvin Odie, who we have ranked number 118 in the country right now, of Rhode Island Elite. This is a guy that is a really big-time athlete. He attacks the rim. He's going to dunk on you every chance he gets. He can really, really defend 1 through 3, which was evident throughout the course of the weekend. And he just plays hard. I'm not saying that he is Lou Dort or that he is a guy like Tony Allen from back in the past, but he has a lot of that to him in the way that he plays as a big physical 2 guard that makes a lot of things happen. He's got official visits coming up with Colorado and some other places. That's going to be a big time deal for him. So Colorado, Creighton, Rutgers, they all had head coaches out to watch him. I really think he's a guy that, if we come back and meet and talk about rankings and anyone was to say, hey, I think he's a, potentially a top 75 to top 100 guy, I certainly wouldn't fight anyone on that.
All right. That's good stuff from Kelvin. Now, Boss, before we let you get out of here, I want to turn the page a little bit. I was at the EYBL there from Tuesday night all the way through the final on Sunday. Nightrydas Elite win the championship game that everybody wanted to see, knocking off Oakland Soldiers, billed as Cam Boozer versus AJ DeBonsa. My question for you, because you talked about this last week, you said if they win this championship, they've got to be in the mix as one of the best teams of all time. I was asked on that broadcast if this is the best team I've ever seen. You've been doing this a little longer than me. It is the best team I've seen, having won E15, E16, and now the EYBL in 3 consecutive seasons. So I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but how do they rank in terms of, I'm not talking about a collection of talent, but the best team we've seen since you've been doing this.
Yeah, if we're talking purely on success and what they've done, there's a really fair argument for them to be number one, because not only did they win those 3 titles, I think they've lost a total of, I think it's 3 games in Nike UIBL play over those last 3 years. So they're definitely in the mix. To me, I think none of you guys are going to remember this team, but the 1996 Riverside Church team is hands down the best AAU team I've ever seen.
That Elton Brand team?
They had Lamar Odom, Elton Brand, Ron Artest. They were just ridiculous, but they're not going to remember them. If you're getting a little more modern, the 2003 Atlanta Celtics are way up there. They had Dwight Howard. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. Josh Smith was a stud. Randolph Morris played in the NBA. Jarvis Crittenden played in the NBA. Brandon Rush from Kansas City actually played a few times with that team, so they're way up there. And then you've got to look at like the Indy Heat teams that had Greg Oden and Daquan Cook and Mike Conley and Josh McRoberts, who dominated the 17U division for 2 straight summers. And as you know, I can go on and on and on. But
you know what's crazy, boss? I didn't even tell you I was going to ask this question, and you just start reciting that stuff like the resident OG going to work. If anybody doesn't appreciate that Bossi is just the ultimate encyclopedia of grassroots basketball, you just saw it right there. Like, think you're going to stump me? Nope. Here's the best.
I didn't even get to 2016 Mocan, 2012 Oakland Soldiers, 2018 Compton Magic. Like, this has been all the intrusive thoughts about whose tops have been invading my mind for the last week. But I think at a minimum, I would put them in the top 4 or 5. And we're talking about just overall, but if we're talking purely on accomplishment, I would have a hard time not putting them number 1.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, everybody. That was a history lesson care of Eric Bossi. We're going to let him go. He's got to get to the gym right now. He's at the NCAA Academy. Bossi, I will see you in the morning. Thank you for that. You lived up to your reputation. Now, fellas, let's talk about what we saw. Again, I'm going to kick it off because the Peach Jam, as I said, Nightrydas got the matchup they wanted. But you know what else? They had to beat Team Takeover in the semifinals. And these guys were every bit as good as advertised. Cam Boozer, you know, people were saying in the course of the championship game, he could have asserted himself a little more. He missed 1 shot all game long. Missed 1 shot. It was almost a flawless floor game. Twin brother Caden, this guy led the EYBL in assists again, and he's just a consummate, like, take care of the basketball, best assist to turnover ratio you can find. Caleb Wilson, Travis's guy, really showed up and played his best basketball. Couldn't help but be happy for him because he's had some up and down moments this spring. And then Dante Allen and Alex Lloyd, those guys, and I said this yesterday, those guys could be stars anywhere else. Instead, they bought into a supporting role. Dante Allen was huge in the finals. So credit to where credit is due, because the Nightrydas completed this run, one of the best teams of all time. You heard Bossi break down exactly where they could rank, but just really, really happy for those guys. Trav, I know there was no champion crowned at the Adidas All-American camp. We talked about the Utah Prospects team, Kessler, last week. Brandon, you were at the Under Armour Association. Who won that title, and what can you tell us about them?
Yeah, Team Thrill came away with their 2nd title in a 3-year span, and I think it's safe to say nobody really expected them to do it. But my funniest takeaway from it is it's just crazy because last week we were talking about how Utah Prospects won without their best prospect in top 10 rising senior Isaiah Harwell. And this time Team Thrill is doing it without, you know, a top 75 player in Chance Mallory. And so it's crazy that they came away with it. And it's a testament to, you know, their culture. I think Coach Mook does a great job of, you know, having those dudes bought in. And it was like the next man up mentality. And so, you know, it was good to see that team come together as a unit and actually really impose their will on other teams and get it done for the 2nd time in 3 years.
And you were saying that Marcus Jackson was someone that really helped himself, because I'm going to admit, like, when we were doing our previews going into the month, I said that Team Thrill's chances were going to depend on Chance Mallory's health. You mentioned it there. He didn't play at all, right? So Marcus Jackson ended up having to step up in a big way.
Yeah, and what's so crazy, Chance being out with that broken ankle, you would think that somebody else would step up from a scoring perspective, but Marcus really does it with his athleticism. He was a difference maker in terms of rebounding, blocking shots, and it did so in an exciting fashion. You know, to be honest, I would be at another court and I would hear the crowd just ooh and ah, and I knew if I turned around and it was coming from Team Thrill's side of things, Marcus just made an amazing play. So, yeah, he has tremendous bounce. He gets off the floor really well, and, you know, he can protect the rim, and he does so in a very exciting fashion. He's a really fun watch, and, somebody whose athleticism, when channeled in the right way, can really make a difference in certain areas at the high major level.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly right there. You channel that athleticism in the right way. He buys into efficiency, and he showed this week he could drive winning. I think it's safe to say he could be playing his way up those rankings as well. All right, Trav, you were in Atlanta at the Adidas All-American camp, and that's a different kind of evaluation setting, but it was a very similar name that stood out. What was the big takeaway for you from that setting?
Yeah, every single time I watch Nate Amit, I come away impressed, and that was the case. This past week, I actually got to watch him in two different settings. He was playing at the 3SSB All-American camp, and he was also playing at an on-the-radar hoops event just down the street with this team-loaded Virginia team. And as I said, every time I watch him, I come away impressed. He shows some sort of area of improvement and development just every single week, it seems like. And this time, it was his ability to just create with the ball in his hands. In an all-star setting, you really never know what you're going to get. But for Nate to come out, he was clearly coming in with energy and focus, and he was determined to go out there and really end on a positive note. And as I said, just the ability to create and score off the dribble. He's getting stronger with the basketball. You can tell his frame is just now starting to scratch the surface of what it can ultimately become. He's looking a little bit more physically mature, looking like he's adding a little bit more strength. So as he continues to develop that, another thing he really showed was just strength perspective. If he's trying to push you up and he can't really get by you, just again because he's not physically strong yet, he can shoot over the top of you. And so there's a couple times he got the ball thrown down to him in the post. He tried to make a move to the paint, got his way stopped, but he would just immediately just pull up and just shoot right over the top of people for about 15, 18-foot jumpers.
And you can find an exclusive interview with Nate Ament on the 24/7 Sports channel. Talked to him last week at the Adidas 3SSB Finals in Rock Hill, which is now where the NCAA Academy is headed. So make sure you check that out after we're done here. Brandon, back to the UAA, your biggest standout outside that championship game was who?
Yeah, it was Davis Fogo of Seattle Select. And I think it's worth noting that Seattle Select won, the championship at the UA Rise division, Under Armour's second-tier division on that league. And it was exciting for me to watch him play just because he made such a big rise in our last update of our ranking. I think he went from the 75 spot to the number 30 spot. I know he's top 30 on our list. And so me going into Chicago, I really want to see how he fared playing against that level of competition, and he dominated. He just stuffed the stat sheet in all ways. He's the tallest player on that Seattle Select team, but he still runs the point guard position for them. He does a good job of, getting his teammates involved, but you could just tell that this dude was just wired to score, wired to find ways to get into the lane in a creative fashion. His pull-up jumper was working for him, and he has a great short-term memory. I think when plays weren't going his way, he shows a good instinct of bouncing back and making sure that not only he stays in the game, but his team stays upbeat. And I think that played a big part in, his team, finishing it out and winning a UA Rise championship.
All right, very cool, guys. The player I want to mention from the EYBL Peach Jam was Braden Burries. I went into this week trying to figure out who's the best guard in the EYBL, or maybe I should say the best guard in the Peach Jam, because Darius Acuff was playing in the PIT. In that EYBL finals, I thought Braden Burries ended up being the best guard. He averaged 22 points, and how about this? 10 rebounds on the week while shooting over 50% from the floor, 40% from the three-point line, and 76% from the free throw line. This power guard, he's got a way of working to his spots, and then he's got some really deceptive bounce. It's somewhat counterintuitive because he doesn't always blow right by his man off the dribble, but then he can rise up and hammer it on you. And he did just that in a head-to-head matchup with Brandon McCoy. It was the game-winning shot. He shot the ball at an exceptional level, and he was far and away the best rebounding guard I saw all week long. All right, we're going to keep it going here, this round table style. I want to ask you guys the same question I asked Bossi, and that's, tell me about someone who caught your eye, whether it's a riser or an underclassman, but someone who is not already a prominent senior. Trav, we will start with you again at the Adidas All-American camp in Atlanta last week.
This was a no-brainer for me. We actually got to watch him several times throughout the course of the spring and summer. I know he impressed Brandon Jenkins. I know he impressed Eric Bossi, and that is 2027 big man Obinna Akizi Jr. He is a 6'11", pushing 7 feet tall with a lengthy wingspan. And what really stood out to me over the weekend at the 3SS All-American camp, although it was a limited viewing just how much these kids got to play, it was just the instincts and the timing as a rim protector. As you can see there on the screen, not many kids his age or in high school in general just have that natural feel and instinct to go up and block shots without fouling, especially, but also on the offensive end. He already has a foundational skill set. He has great hands. He has good touch around the rim. He has left and right hook shots. Now it's just a matter of just letting the course letting everything just take its own course. Just stay out of the way. Let him continue to develop. Let him to continue to grow into his body and just to start to naturally expand. So there's so much talent, so much upside here that he's a player that I'm very excited about. And I think he's one that we are going to be talking about quite a bit here over the years to come.
All right, very cool. Brandon, same question to you, an underclassman or a riser from the Under Armour Association Finals?
Yeah, I think I'm going to stick on the 2025 train here and go with Omari Witherspoon for DC Premier. And I know he's a guy that I know that you've seen during the Scholastic Live period, and I know Bossi wrote about him during the first weekend of the July Live period at Under Armour, and he impressed me as well. I just think when you look at a guy who's 6'4", 6'5", who can, play on the ball, get to his pull-up, those long arms. I mean, he has defensive potential. He can score with either hand at the basket. I mean, there's just so much that he can do. And so, just reading previous write-ups before watching him play, I really want to see how talented he was because I know he can make a push for top 150 status. But, after watching him play, he seems like a dude who should be in consideration for 4-star status. And I think his recruitment is starting to reflect it. He had Kevin Willard at his games. I know Butler was there. Mike Young from Virginia Tech was there. And a lot of other high major shooters that were starting to get involved and that he's looking to lock in business with. So, yeah, he's definitely a talent that I'm, looking forward to see how he grows moving forward.
Yeah, Omari Witherspoon has had a huge month, and you said it. It started at the Scholastic Live periods. He picked up, he had like a top 3 going into there. I think it was 2 A-10 schools in Butler, and now he's got like multiple high major programs who've offered since. So his recruitment potentially could just be totally redefined. But and you broke down exactly why, and we've all thought the same thing. It was me in June, then Bossi first week in Atlanta. You saw the same thing this week. So I think it is a very good bet that he's going to be included in those updated national rankings next month. Guys, the player I want to recognize, an underclassman from the Peach Jam, is Mika Murinen from Brad Beal Elite 16s. He was already ranked in the top 50, and I'm going to tell you what, the biggest takeaway for me is that is way too low. You can just watch these clips, and we're talking about someone who is 6'10", 6'11", and you're seeing it, the splash from behind the three-point line. He puts the ball on the floor and attacks the rim with long strides. He can block shots. He does just about everything. Now, Travis, you saw him earlier in the week. I ended up seeing him later in the week. And you see those bandages on his neck. That's because he took a nasty fall in the quarterfinals, wasn't able to play in the semis, came back in the finals, and was absolutely huge. This guy looked like a potential 5-star prospect to me. Just put it all on display, and I think his recruitment is going to go to the very highest levels sooner rather than later. I'll tell you what, where you can find everything from last week. It is all on 247sports.com.